We're going to talk about is how do we write expressions from word problems or word phrases. So the first thing we need to talk about is what is an expression. So remember, an expression is the combination of numbers and variables using operations. And so those operations can include addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So pretty standard. One of the biggest things you have to remember about an expression is it doesn't have an equal sign. So that is from an equation. So what we're going to work with today are just combinations of numbers and letters, no equal sign, no symbols. So take a second and go ahead and copy down these keywords. I would pause the video now and then copy down these different phrases that are going to be used for the different operations, and then we'll talk about how they sound with each operation. So pause the video, copy these down now. Okay, so looking at the different keywords, most of these are pretty familiar, like addition is adding, plus, sum, more, increase, subtract, minus, difference, product, and so forth. Now, one thing I do want to talk about are the two phrases twice and thrice. So that's with multiplication. So twice means times 2, thrice means times 3. And then the word per, this one is kind of a tricky one. This one can sometimes mean division as well. So sometimes division. It really just depends on the situation. And so we need to know that per can kind of be interchangeable. So we're going to look at some basic word phrases before we talk about how we get into more complicated phrases. So phrasing for addition, the sum of n and 5. So the and is going to tell you where the plus is. Sum is telling us that there is addition. So n and 5, n plus 5. M is increased by 8. So m, we're adding 8 to it. 6 plus x. 3 and x together. So again, that and means where the addition sign is going to go. 2 added to x. 5 more than m. We're going to save these for later because this has something called a turnaround phrase in it. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, one thing I want to say here is that if you look at these, it is written in the order that you read it. So unless you have a specific turnaround phrase, which we'll get to in a minute, you always write in the order that you read. So n goes first, then 5, m, then 8, 6, then x, 3, and x. So same thing continues over here. 22 is being decreased by m, so we're taking away m from it. The difference of h and 7, so h minus 7, the and tells us where the minus sign goes. Z is being reduced by x, so sometimes we don't even have numbers, it's just variables, but again, same concepts. 18 subtracted by z. And this one we'll save for later, that is a turnaround phrase. Next is multiplication. Now, one thing with multiplication is if you have a letter and a number like this, you don't always have to put a symbol for multiplication. You can just write it connected. So the product of 3k would just be 3k. So that means multiplication between 2 times a number. So anytime you see a number specified, but it's not telling you what number, we're going to use a variable x. So 2 times a number, we don't know what the number is, so 2 times x. Thrice x means 3 times that amount, so 3x. 2/3 of m, so 2/3, we can still use the fraction form, and then it's just attached with m. The multiple of 5 and a number, so remember order matters, 5 is first, and then the number, whatever it may be, so x. All right, and then the last one, division. When we write these, it's best to write them as a fraction. So you don't use the division symbol in high school math. This is a very elementary type symbol. We will just write it as a fraction, which means division. So 8 divided by m, order matters. 8 is first, so 8 is in the numerator. The ratio of m and 3, order matters. M is in the numerator. The quotient of 2 and w, 2 and w, so 2 is being divided by w. 2 per person. So with this one, it's 2 per person. This is one of the ones where per can sometimes be phrased This one is a star because it is going to have a turnaround with it. And then 24 being shared X times. Okay, so now we're going to go back and revisit these turnaround phrases. So first we're going to talk about what turnaround phrases are. It's just a small little phrasing that tells you, hey, the order is actually going to change here. So there are a couple phrases. Than, to, and from. Okay, so than, to, and from. So I'm going to give you some examples of these as well so you guys can see. So than is usually paired with less than or more than. Okay, so that's usually addition subtraction. The than will come after whatever symbol they're telling us. So less would be subtraction, more is addition, and the than is telling you to flip the words around. So next we're going to look at to. So it's really only with one phrase, added to. Okay, so it's being added to, so you can see that in this example, 2 is being added to X. So you're starting with X, adding to. So then the last one is from. So taken from, divided from. And then the last one, so these are interchangeable with different operations. The word per when in division form. Okay, so per when in division form is a turnaround. Okay, so I'm going to go back and revisit these ones, and then we'll talk about more complex phrases. So 2 is being added to X. That means we're starting with X and we're adding 2 to it. 5 more than M. That means we had M and now we have 5 more. So M will go first and we're adding 5 to it. 7 less than T. So T is what we started and then we took away 7 from it. It really is a big deal with your subtraction phrases because if you put it in the wrong order, you'll end up with the wrong symbol with subtraction. So last one, 2 per person. We have P amount of people and we're dividing by 2 per person. Okay. All right, so let's look at these phrases. These are going to be a little bit more complex. So 3 less than the product of 2 and X. So we have multiple operations going on here. So first thing I want to talk about is the turnaround phrase. Whenever we have a turnaround phrase, whatever's in front of it will go at the end. So right away, if I know we're doing 3 less than something, I'm going to be taking away 3 at the very end. So 3 is taken away from the product of 2 and X. That means we started with 2 times X and we took away 3. So 2X minus 3. A number is being added to the ratio of 2 variables. So a number, we don't know what it is, so we'll call it X, is being added to. So we're going to add X on to the ratio. That means division of 2 variables. Now, we don't know what the variables are. Just make up letters for them. It doesn't matter. So ratio of M over N. X is a number is being added to a ratio of 2 other numbers. 18 is taken from. From is that turnaround phrase, so we're taking away 18 from twice a number, so 2 times some random number. All right, last thing we're going to look at is parentheses, and then we'll do a couple examples. So parentheses, words or phrases, so there's a few. Times the sum or difference, and I'll abbreviate there, diff for difference. The product of the sum or difference, and then twice or thrice the sum or difference of something. So the reason I know this is parentheses is that it has 2 operations right away. We're going to times, all of these mean some sort of multiplication here, times the sum of something. So times the sum or times the difference means we've got to add or subtract something first and then multiply. So we'll see that here. It's saying we're going to do 2 times, but not 2 times a number, not 2 times variable, we're going to do 2 times, but we've got to do the sum of something first. The sum of a number and 3. So 2 times the sum. Thrice means 3 times, so we're not 3 times a variable, we're timesing the difference of something. The difference of 2 and x. So 2 minus x. The product of 5 and, now here, this is probably the hardest one, so I want you guys to put a star here. It's not the product of 5 and 4. It's saying 4 less than a number. The product of 5 and 4 less than something else. So we have 5, and we're going to multiply it by not 4, but 4 less than a number. So remember, less than is a turnaround phrase. So we're going to be taking 4 away from some number first. So we got to do 4 less than a number, then we can times it by 5. And these are the most complicated ones, parentheses phrases. This is always the one that people struggle with to start. So if you're a little stuck with these, it just takes practice to recognize. So it's not too big of a deal. If you feel a little lost right now with maybe this phrasing, as long as you're good with this and then making note of turnaround phrases, you're fine to start. So let's look at a couple examples, and then I'll have you guys do 2 on your own. So example 1, 2 is increased by, so 2 is being increased by, so added, that's a plus sign, the product of 3 and x. So 3 and x are going to be multiplied together. So remember, the biggest thing is you write in the order you read, unless there's a turnaround. And we don't have that, so we're going to write in this order. 2 is being increased by the product, that means multiplication, of 3 and x. And that's it. The quotient, that means division of 2 numbers. Do we know what those numbers are? No, so we're going to use variables, so x and y. Now remember, division is written as a fraction, so x divided by y, and then it's telling us at the end we're going to plus 5 to that, so add 5. 8 less than, so what is this phrase right here? It is a turnaround. So where's 8 going to go? At the very end. Right away, I need to recognize that's a turnaround, so I'm putting it at the end. 8 less than, twice a number. Twice means 2 times, a random number. The sum of x shared 8 ways and 9. So remember, and, we said this at the beginning, and tells you where the plus sign will go if it's saying the sum or something like that. So this is where the plus sign will go. The sum of x, which is shared 8 ways, shared is division. So x shared 8 ways and 9. So I want you guys to try 1 and 2 on your own. Pause the video now and then try those and then check. So pause, try them, and then check your work. Okay, so 3 times the sum. So order we read it. 3 times the sum of something. The sum, well, we've got to do that first. That's a parentheses phrase. The sum of x, and remember that tells you where the plus sign goes, x and 5. So 3 times the sum. So we've got to do that first. All right, added to. One thing we want to notice right now, added to is a turnaround phrase. So whatever is in front of that is going to go at the very end. So all of this right here in front is going to go at the end. So I'm going to add it at the end, the quotient of 4 and m. So quotient is division, so the quotient of 4 and m is being added to 7. Okay, so what we're going to do is move on. We're going to save this to recap the next day. So we're going to move on to the next page. Now, this one is a little bit easier. We're going to work backwards, writing a word phrase from an expression. So you can see you have all these different expressions here. You're going to make up a word phrase for them. And so all of you guys, except for the ones you do with me, these will vary just depending on what words you decide to choose. So I have 2 times x minus 3. So to start, you can make it that simple. 2 times x minus 3. We're just turning it into a word phrase. So 2 times x minus 3. Very direct, very simple. But I also want to be able to play around with the word phrases. The more that you, or the more complicated you make these, the easier it will be to read them. So I am first going to look at this. This is division, 1/2, right? So division, we can look at some of those words for division. So I might use quotient, which is a harder word. So I can say the quotient of 1 and 2. So 1 and 2, 1 divided by 2. And then I'm going to use a multiplication word. So I could say times. And instead of saying m, maybe I could say a variable. Right? So it makes it sound a little bit fancier. You can kind of say, just because I'm using some of the more complex words, and instead of directly saying m, I'm saying a variable. Now, we also want to be able to use our turnaround phrases. So here, I see a subtraction. Let's look at some turnaround phrases, right? I can have less than, taken from, added to. So one that I may struggle to recognize would be the from. So why don't we write that so we can get comfortable with it? So I'm going to start off with whatever is at the end. In, taken, from, 3. And that's practicing our turnaround. So what I want you guys to do is go ahead, try 7, 8, and 9. Try and write your own word phrases here. I'll show you what I come up with, but go ahead and try writing your own for 7, 8, and 9. Okay, so for these two problems, we all have different answers for these, just depending on what words you would choose. But for this first one, we have to use some sort of subtraction phrase. So for this one, I am going to say the difference of 25 and W. So it's important that we write in order as it reads. So difference is denoting the subtraction symbol, and then I write in the order 25 goes first and is where the subtraction would be, W comes next. For this next one, we have two operations going on. We have multiplication and an addition. So again, we want to write in the order that it reads. So this one we could do 4 times a variable added to 3. And then the last one, we have division. So again, some sort of division phrase. So if we look at those, these ones are less easily remembered. So maybe the ratio, we would say the ratio of x and 3. And again, the order matters here. So whatever we would write first is what's going to go in the numerator. So write in the order that it reads. Okay, so for this last part, we are looking at writing an expression and then evaluating that expression as well. So these are going to be more word problem-esque instead of word phrases. So for this first one, it says, your age is 2 times your little brother's minus 5. So again, it's adding context, your age, but that doesn't really change what we're doing here. We're looking at our operation. So your age is 2 times. So 2 times your little brother's. This part is unknown. So like this is saying 2 times a number or something that is unknown, which would give us a variable. So we'll just call it x. So 2 times your little brother's minus 5. So this expression represents your age. Now this next part though is asking us to evaluate. Evaluate just means to substitute in a number that they're providing. So it says if your brother is 8, how old are you? So we are just going to substitute in 8 for our variable, and we can use our calculator for that. So 2 parentheses 8 minus 5, you are 11. So next example, you are participating in a walkathon where each mile you walk, $12 will be donated. So for each is a multiplication phrase. That one is a little bit harder to remember, each. So we have $12 for each mile. So I'm going to put M for mile, 12 times M. Then we're going to substitute by evaluating 13. So 12 times 13. And again, we can just use our calculator for that. 12 times 13 gives us 156. So we would raise $156. All right, I'll do one more and then you'll try one on your own. So it says you and 3 friends are planning a surprise party. You each contribute the same amount of money for food. So what can be tricky about this one is you have to think about the total amount of people that there are. So you and 3 friends, even though we see the number 3, there's actually 4 of us. And then we're looking for our operation. So each would be multiplication. So $4 or 4 people contributing some amount of money for food. And then down here, it's asking how much money would we have total if each person contributes $7.25. So again, that's just evaluating or substituting. So 4 times 7.25. Again, we can just use our calculator for that. And we get $29. All right, so try this one on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, try this next one, and then see how you did. Okay, so for this one, it has 2 operations going on. It's going to be very similar to this first one. A cell phone company charges you $25 a month, or another way we could phrase this is each month. So $25 a month plus, so plus symbol, a $50 activation fee. Now, a $50 activation fee, that is one time, which is why we don't have a variable with it. Monthly, that's going to be our variable. So evaluate the expression for 8 months of service. We will substitute in 8 for 8 months. And again, just go to our calculator, 25 times 8 plus 50 equals $250 total. So we will save these 4 for the next day in class. So you are done.